Okay, this is section 3.1 and 3.2. We're going to be solving equations using addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. When we finish, I want you to be able to solve a linear equation using those operations, as well as use linear equations to solve a real-life problem. Now first we're going to talk about addition and subtraction. When we're solving an equation, our ultimate goal is always going to be to get the variable by itself. When we're solving equations that only deal with addition and subtraction, we're going to use the inverse operation. So addition and subtraction are inverses of each other, so we're going to be using the opposites. So a few things I need you to remember. What you do on one side of the equal sign, you must do to the other. Our ultimate goal is going to be to get the variable by itself. We want to isolate the variable. And then you can always check your answer. There's no reason to miss any of these problems because you can always go back and check. Now let's look at a few to work. The first one, I've got x minus 5 is equal to negative 13. Well, my goal is to get x by itself. I've got minus 5. What's the opposite of that? Plus 5. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So now I have x is equal to, what's negative 13 combined with a positive 5? Signs are different. Small number from the big numbers, keep the sign of the big. So I have negative 8. Now to go back and check, you would say, okay, what's negative 8 minus 5? Oh, that's negative 13. I know I have the right answer. Now let's look at 21 plus r is equal to 6. We're going to subtract 21. I have a positive 21, so I'm going to subtract it from both sides because I want it to add up to 0. 21 minus 21 is 0. So now I have r is equal to 6, positive 6 combined with a negative 21. Oh, signs are different. I'm going to subtract the small number from the large number and keep the sign of the large. 21 minus 6. Oh, that's 15. Now is that 15 positive or negative? It's a negative 15. So now I'd like for you to go ahead and hit pause, work the next two problems, and then resume again to check your answers. Okay, so when you had x minus 9 is equal to negative 17, you added 9 to both sides. When you combined your like terms, you have x is equal to negative 8. The next one, you should have finished up with y is equal to negative 6. You had a positive 14, so you subtracted 14 from both sides. Okay, now let's look at a couple more. Now I have negative 11 is equal to n minus negative 2. Remember, it's just like English class. You cannot have a double negative in English. You cannot have a double negative in math. So now I have negative 11 is equal to n plus 2. I still want to get my variable by itself. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Now a negative 11 combined with a negative 2, signs are the same, add and keep the sign. So now I have negative 13 is equal to n. Let's look at this other one. I've got negative 3 plus x is equal to 7. I'm going to add 3 to both sides, doing the opposite. Negative 3 plus 3 adds up to 0, so I'm left with x is equal to 10. Now remember, I can always go and double check. For this one, I could have said negative 3 combined with a 10. What's that equal to? Oh, it's equal to 7, and that's what I said it was. Now I'd like for you to hit pause again, and I'd like for you to work these two, and then resume to check your answers. Okay, so when you worked these, you should have ended up with n is equal to negative 12 and y is equal to 17. Now let's take a look at a word problem. It's going to work exactly the same way, except you're just going to have to come up with the equation. You owe $16 to your cousin. You paid your cousin X dollars back, and now you owe 4. How much did you pay back? Okay, so when we look at this, let's look at the important information. So we know we owe him $16. We paid him X dollars. Now I owe him 4. I'm looking for how much I paid him back. So I'm going to be solving for this. I want to find out how much I gave him back. So when I owe him $16, I subtract X dollars because I paid him back. Now I owe him $4. So the amount I originally owed him subtracted by how much I paid him back, and this is how much I owe now. So now I have negative 16. I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. So I have negative x is equal to negative 12. Now I can't have a negative variable. So what's in front of this? It's negative 1. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to divide each side by negative 1. So x is equal to $12. So you would say I paid my cousin back $12. Okay, now we're on to multiplication and division. These are going to work the same. Once again, we are going to be using the inverses, and multiplication and division are inverses of each other. So whenever the problem uses multiplication, you're going to be using division to undo that operation. So when we solve over here, let's just work with a few examples. I have negative 4x is equal to 1. My goal is still to get the variable by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. So now I have x is equal to negative 1/4. Notice that it doesn't really matter where this negative sign is when I have a fraction. So x is equal to negative 1/4. Now let's take a look at x divided by 5 is equal to 30. How is this 5 attached to the x? Okay, division. What's the opposite of division? Multiplication. So we're going to multiply both sides by 5. So I have 5 times x over 5. I'm going to be able to cross cancel. So those are going to cancel out. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So x is equal to, let's see, 30 times 5 gives me 150. And there I go. So I have 2 more problems for you. I want you to go ahead and hit pause once again and resume to check your answers. Okay, so when you finish this one, you should have gotten x is equal to negative 2/6. And when you get a fraction that can simplify, I expect you to go ahead and simplify it down to x equals negative 1/3. The next one, when you multiply both sides by negative 9, you'll have x is equal to negative 72. Now let's take a look at these. There's also a rule that says that if my coefficient is a fraction, if I multiply by the reciprocal, I'll be able to clear it. I'll be able to get rid of that coefficient because my goal is to get m by itself. So what's the reciprocal of negative 2/3? Negative 3 over 2. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3 over 2. Now look what's going to happen. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. My 3's are going to cancel. My 2's are going to cancel, which leaves me with m. So now I've got 10 times negative 3 over 2. I can simplify here. 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 10 5. Now what's 5 times negative 3? Negative 15. Now, if these make you a little more uncomfortable, you may want to check these a little more regularly, and I personally recommend that you check all of them. So when I multiply negative 2/3 times negative 15, notice I just plugged it in for m. Oh, 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 15 5 times. 2 times 5 gives me 10. Notice that they're both negative, so it does check. Notice that this one is the exact same thing. The only difference is the way it was written. So if I undo my operations as I come to them, if I multiply both sides by 3, so now I have negative 2m is equal to 30. Now I can divide both sides by negative 2. So m is equal to negative 15. It's the exact same problem. It's just written a slightly different way. Okay, now I would like for you to hit pause once again and work these two and resume in a moment when you finish to check your answer. Okay, so when you did the first one, you should have gotten x is equal to negative 21 divided by 8. I'm okay with you leaving it as an improper fraction. And the last one should have been a repeat of the other, which is m is equal to negative 15. Now let's take a look at one more word problem. The usual rate for taking and projecting professional movies is 24 frames per second. I want you to find the total number of frames in a movie that is 90 minutes long.